How does it feel to be a loser? That question came from my son-in-law, Jonathan, at dinner last night. He said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. Called me a pathetic failure, a burden. Said I belonged in a nursing home. My name is Dr. Henry Douglas, though most people just call me Hank the janitor. You see, 3 years ago, I walked away from my $450,000 surgery career to become a hospital janitor making $14 an hour. My own daughter was ashamed of me. My son-in-law thought I'd lost my mind. What they didn't know was that I'd been building something in secret, something worth $8.2 million, something that would make Jonathan's smile freeze when the restaurant owner walked over to our table. Because sometimes the people who look like they've lost everything are actually the ones holding all the cards. If this sounds like a story you need to hear, hit that subscribe button. I'd love to know where you're watching from in the comments. Let me tell you what really happened that night. Let me paint you a picture of how far I'd fallen in my family's eyes. Every morning at 6 a.m., I catch the number 47 bus to Metropolitan Hospital. My monthly bus pass costs $85. I wear the same navy blue janitor uniform with Henry D., stitched on the pocket. Size large, bought from the hospital supply store for $23.99. My daughter Arabella works at the same hospital. She's a pediatric surgeon, just like I taught her to be. But when her colleagues see me mopping the hallways, she pretends not to notice. Last week I heard her tell another doctor I was going through a difficult transition. Transition. That's what she calls it. The truth is messier. 3 years ago, I quit surgery the day after Aurora's funeral. Couldn't handle watching another patient slip away. Every flatline reminder of my failure to save the one person who mattered most. My son-in-law Jonathan makes $95,000 a year as a corporate lawyer. He drives a leased BMW, wears $2,800 Armani suits, and never lets me forget the difference in our circumstances. Arabella deserves better than this family embarrassment, he told her last month. I heard them arguing in the kitchen during Sunday dinner. Dad's sick, Jonathan. He needs time. He needs professional help, and we need to stop enabling this breakdown. They don't know I heard. But I did. Jonathan's been pushing Arabella to cut contact with me entirely. Says it's bad for her reputation, bad for their future children to have a mentally unstable grandfather. His words, not mine. Arabella's torn. She loved her mother fiercely, and part of her understands my grief. But another part, the ambitious surgeon part, is ashamed. Her colleagues whisper when they see me. The great Dr. Douglas, reduced to custodial work. Jonathan seized on that shame, fed it, nurtured it. Your father's having some kind of psychotic break, he'd say. Real men don't abandon their responsibilities over grief. Arabella started avoiding the hospital's night shift when I work, started making excuses not to visit my apartment, started agreeing with Jonathan that maybe I needed intervention. Last month they staged what Jonathan called a family meeting. Sat me down at their granite kitchen island like I was a problem to solve. Dad, we think you should consider Golden Years Manor, Arabella said, sliding a brochure across the counter. It's a lovely assisted living facility. Jonathan nodded approvingly. You'd have your own room, meals provided, medical supervision. I looked at the brochure. $4,200 a month, private rooms starting at $850 square feet. I'm not ready for that, I said quietly. Jonathan's jaw tightened. With respect, Henry, you're not making rational decisions right now. That's when I knew. He wasn't trying to help me. He was trying to remove me. See, Jonathan comes from old money. His grandfather founded Sterling and Associates law firm in 1962. Jonathan grew up expecting deference, assuming his judgments carried weight simply because of his last name. But grief doesn't respect pedigree. Loss doesn't care about your portfolio. Aurora and I, we built everything from scratch, met in medical school, both working 3 jobs to pay tuition. She became a nurse practitioner, I became a surgeon. Together we saved lives and saved money. But when cancer took her, I stopped caring about money, stopped caring about status, started caring about what actually mattered. Jonathan couldn't understand that shift. In his world, a man's worth equals his salary, period. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Arabella just got promoted to attending physician. Jonathan suggested the Gardens restaurant. Somewhere nice, he said. somewhere appropriate for the occasion. I should have known he'd use the opportunity to make his point about my situation one final time. The real danger wasn't Jonathan's insults. It was what came next. 2 weeks before tonight's dinner, Arabella called me with tears in her voice. "Dad, I'm pregnant." My heart nearly stopped. After 3 years of grief, suddenly there was this brilliant flash of hope. A grandchild. Aurora's legacy continuing. 8 weeks along, Arabella whispered. "We haven't told anyone else yet." I wanted to shout with joy, wanted to tell her how proud Aurora would be, how she'd always dreamed of being a grandmother. But Arabella's next words cut that joy in half. "Jonathan and I have been talking about boundaries, about what kind of environment we want for our children." The unspoken message hung between us like a blade. If I didn't get my act together, I'd be cut out entirely. Jonathan had been building his case for months, collecting evidence of my instability. My decision to quit surgery, my job as a janitor, my small studio apartment on Elm Street that I rent for $980 a month. He'd been documenting everything, taking photos of my old Honda Civic with its 340,000 miles and faded paint, recording our conversations when I talked about missing Aurora. "Arabella's career is taking off," he told his parents at their anniversary party last month. "She can't afford to be associated with family drama." His mother, Constance Sterling, agreed immediately. Perhaps it's time for some difficult decisions. They were positioning themselves as Arabella's protectors, saving her from her unstable father. The legal angle worried me most. Jonathan knows family law. He'd already researched guardianship procedures, involuntary commitment processes. Started building a paper trail that painted me as an unfit grandfather. "If Henry's having a breakdown," he told Arabella, "we need to document it properly, for everyone's protection." Arabella was starting to believe him. The shame of having a janitor father, combined with pregnancy hormones and career pressure, was wearing her down. "Maybe Jonathan's right," she said during our last phone call. "Maybe you need more help than I can provide." I heard the defeat in her voice. She was giving up on me. Without Arabella, I'd lose everything that connected me to Aurora. Our daughter was the only family we had left. Our grandchild would be Aurora's genetic legacy, her laugh and her kindness passed down through generations. If Jonathan succeeded in convincing Arabella to cut contact, that grandchild would grow up never knowing me, never hearing stories about their grandmother, never understanding the love that built this family. The financial pressure was real too. My janitor's salary is $28,000 a year. My studio apartment, bus passes, and basic living expenses consume most of that. Jonathan knew exactly how vulnerable I appeared on paper. He'd already started making calls. Last week I caught him researching elder care intervention specialists, people who help families navigate difficult transitions when aging parents become burdens. But the deeper threat was psychological. Jonathan was systematically destroying Arabella's respect for me. Every conversation became another opportunity to highlight my failures. "Your father used to be somebody," he'd say. "Now look at him." Arabella was starting to see me through his eyes, not as a grieving widower, but as a broken man who'd abandoned his responsibilities. The pregnancy announcement accelerated everything. Jonathan saw it as the perfect leverage point. "We can't have instability around our child," he told Arabella. "Your father needs professional help, or he needs to step back." Translation: choose between your husband and your father. And Arabella, exhausted from residency and overwhelmed by pregnancy, was choosing Jonathan. Tonight's dinner was my last chance. If I couldn't find a way to show Arabella who I really was, not the broken janitor she saw, but the man who'd spent 3 years building something meaningful from his grief, I'd lose her forever. Jonathan was counting on my continued silence, my acceptance of his narrative, my willingness to fade quietly into whatever assisted living facility he'd chosen. What he didn't understand was that silence had never been weakness. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes a man retreats not because he's beaten, but because he's building something too important to discuss until it's complete. Aurora always said I had a gift for surprising people, for letting them underestimate me until the moment it mattered most. Tonight, sitting across from Jonathan at the Gardens restaurant, I was about to remember why she was right. The stakes couldn't be higher. My relationship with my daughter, my connection to my grandchild, My chance to honor Aurora's memory in a way that would last generations. Jonathan thought he held all the cards. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The hostess at the gardens knew me immediately. Dr. Douglas. Right this way, sir. She led us toward the back corner, past couples sharing wine and families celebrating birthdays. The restaurant buzzed with Saturday night energy. Jonathan frowned. I think there's been a mistake. Our reservation is under Sterling. Of course, Mr. Sterling, the hostess smiled. Table 7, as requested, Dr. Douglas's usual spot. I watched Jonathan's confusion deepen, but he shrugged it off, probably assuming the hostess had mixed up another customer. Arabella looked beautiful. Pregnancy gave her skin a glow that reminded me of Aurora. She wore the sapphire earrings her mother had left her. Congratulations on the promotion, sweetheart, I said once we were seated. Thanks, Dad. Her smile was cautious, guarded. Jonathan studied the wine list with theatrical importance. The Chateau Margaux looks excellent. $340 a bottle, but Arabella deserves the best. He made sure I heard the price. Made sure I understood the gap between his world and mine. I'll have water, I said. Of course you will, Jonathan muttered. Arabella shot him a warning look. Jonathan. What? I'm just saying your father's probably watching his budget these days. The server approached. Young woman, maybe 25, with kind eyes. Good evening, Dr. Douglas. The usual table set up? Jonathan's frown deepened. How does everyone here know you? I eat here sometimes, I said simply. On a janitor's salary? Jonathan laughed. What do you order, the breadbasket? Arabella looked uncomfortable. Jonathan, please. I'm just curious how your father affords places like this. The Gardens isn't exactly McDonald's. The server hesitated, clearly sensing tension. I'll take the salmon, Arabella said quickly. Dad? Same for me. Jonathan ordered the $95 dry-aged ribeye. Might as well enjoy the good life while we can, right, Henry? His tone had shifted, less conversational, more predatory. How's the new job treating you? He continued. Still enjoying the custodial arts? It's honest work. Oh, absolutely. Very honest. Very humble. Jonathan leaned back in his chair. Tell me, what's your hourly wage these days? Jonathan, stop. Arabella's voice carried warning. It's a reasonable question. I mean, we're family. We should understand each other's circumstances. I met his eyes steadily. $14 an hour. $14. Jonathan nodded slowly. That's, what, $28,000 a year? Before taxes? About that. Fascinating. And your rent? Jonathan. Arabella's hand slammed the table. Other diners were starting to notice. A couple at the next table glanced over, then quickly looked away. I'm just trying to understand your father's situation, honey. His choices. Jonathan's voice rose slightly. Deliberate. He wanted an audience. See, I've been thinking about our conversation last week, about boundaries, about what kind of influence we want around our children. Arabella's face went pale. We agreed not to discuss this tonight. Did we? Because I think it's exactly what we need to discuss. Jonathan turned to face me directly. Henry, let me ask you something. Do you think this is what Aurora would have wanted? The mention of my wife's name made my chest tighten. Excuse me? Your current situation, the job, the lifestyle choices. Do you think the woman who married a successful surgeon would be proud of what you've become? The restaurant seemed to quiet around us. Even the background music felt muted. Be very careful, I said quietly. I'm just asking an honest question. You had a good life, a respected career, financial stability, and you threw it all away. Arabella was staring at her plate, tears forming. For what? Some kind of self-pity party? Some dramatic gesture? Jonathan, that's enough. Is it, though? Because Arabella and I are starting a family. We're building something important, and we can't have instability around our children. His voice carried across the dining room now. Other conversations had stopped entirely. We can't have a grandfather who's given up on life, who's chosen to be a failure. The word hung in the air like smoke. Failure. How does it feel, Henry? Jonathan leaned forward, his smile sharp as glass. How does it feel to be a loser? The server had frozen halfway between our table and the kitchen. An elderly couple 2 tables over was openly staring. A man with a phone had subtly started recording. Arabella was crying now, quiet tears that dripped onto her untouched bread plate. I asked you a question, Jonathan pressed. How does it feel to know your own daughter is ashamed of you? I looked at Arabella. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Then I looked at Jonathan. His smile was triumphant, cruel. He thought he'd won. "You done?" I asked quietly. "What?" "Are you finished? Or do you have more to say about my wife's memory?" Something in my tone made his smile falter slightly. "I think I've made my point." "Good." I folded my napkin carefully and placed it on the table. Because now it's my turn. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every eye in the place was fixed on our table. Jonathan's confidence wavered for just a moment. "Your turn for what?" I was about to answer when footsteps approached from behind me. "Good evening, Dr. Douglas." The voice belonged to Catherine Brooks, the garden's general manager. She'd worked here for 12 years, since before Jonathan was even dating Arabella. "Catherine," I nodded. "How are you tonight?" "Wonderful, sir. I see you've brought family." Jonathan's eyebrows shot up. "Sir?" Catherine smiled warmly. "Dr. Douglas, should I prepare the garden patio setup? I know how much you enjoy the view of Aurora's roses." I felt Arabella's sharp intake of breath beside me. "Aurora's roses?" she whispered. Catherine nodded enthusiastically. "Your father had us plant an entire memorial garden last spring. White roses, just like your mother loved. The maintenance crew tends them every week." Jonathan was staring at Catherine like she'd spoken in foreign language. "I'm sorry," he interrupted. "I think there's been some confusion. This is Henry Douglas. He works as a custodian." Catherine's professional smile never wavered, but something flickered in her eyes. "I'm aware of Dr. Douglas's current position," she said carefully. "Will there be anything special for tonight's dinner?" "Current position?" Jonathan pressed. "What other position would he have?" Before Catherine could answer, a young man in chef whites approached our table. He couldn't have been older than 25, with nervous energy and excited eyes. "Dr. Douglas, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I had to thank you personally." Jonathan and Arabella exchanged confused glances. "Thank me for what, son?" "The scholarship. The Aurora Douglas Memorial Scholarship for culinary students. Without it, I never could have afforded Le Cordon Bleu. I graduate next month." The young chef's voice carried across the dining room. Other diners were listening now, their attention drawn to our table for entirely different reasons than Jonathan's outburst. "I'm sure there's been a mistake," Jonathan said sharply. "Henry here is a hospital janitor. He doesn't give out scholarships." The chef looked confused. "Sir, The Scholarship Foundation has been running for 2 years. It's helped dozens of students." Arabella was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Dad?" An older woman approached from the bar area. Distinguished, wearing a hospital ID badge, moving with the confident stride of someone used to being in charge. "Henry? I thought that was you. Dr. Patricia Walsh, Chief of Staff at Metropolitan Hospital. My former colleague and current boss, though she probably hadn't seen me in my janitor uniform yet tonight." "Patricia," I stood to greet her. "What brings you here?" "Board meeting ran late. Thought I'd grab dinner before heading home." She glanced at the table. "I hope I'm not interrupting a family celebration." Jonathan was looking between Dr. Walsh and me like he was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. "You two know each other?" Arabella asked. Dr. Walsh looked surprised. "Know each other? Honey, your father and I worked together for 15 years. He saved more lives in our ER than any surgeon I've ever known." "Worked together?" Jonathan's voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Dr. Douglas was our head of emergency surgery until—" "Doctor." Walsh paused, clearly trying to be tactful, "until he decided to take a different path after Aurora's passing." The young chef was still hovering nearby, and I noticed other staff members gathering at the edges of the dining room. A busboy who'd been clearing tables stopped to listen. 2 servers paused their work. Catherine Brooks stepped closer to our table. "Dr. Douglas, should I have the kitchen prepare something special? I know the chef has been wanting to try that new salmon preparation you suggested last month." "Suggested?" Arabella's voice was barely a whisper. Jonathan was looking around the restaurant like he'd stumbled into an alternate reality, staff members nodding respectfully in my direction. Dr. Walsh treating me like a colleague. The chef talking about scholarships. None of it fit the narrative he'd constructed about the broken janitor. "There's clearly been some misunderstanding," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Doctor." Walsh checked her watch. Actually, Henry, I'm glad I ran into you. I have those foundation documents in my car. The board approved the new funding for the pediatric wing. We'll need your signature on the disbursement forms. Foundation documents. The words hit the table like thunder. Jonathan's face had gone completely white. Foundation documents? He stammered. Dr. Walsh didn't notice the tension at our table. She was checking her phone, already mentally moving to her next task. The Aurora Douglas Cancer Research Foundation, she said absently. The board meeting was specifically about the new pediatric oncology wing funding. $8.2 million approved for the next phase. Arabella's fork clattered to her plate. $8.2 million? She whispered. Dad? Arabella's voice cracked. What foundation? Jonathan found his voice first. There's obviously been some mistake. Patricia, Dr. Walsh, this is Henry Douglas. He's a hospital janitor. He makes $14 an hour. Dr. Walsh finally looked up from her phone, taking in the scene at our table for the first time. The tension, Arabella's tears, Jonathan's hostile posture. I'm sorry, I don't understand, she said slowly. My son-in-law seems to think there's been some confusion about who I am, I said quietly. Dr. Walsh looked at Jonathan like he'd announced the earth was flat. Mr. Sterling, correct? I remember you from the hospital Christmas party. You're Arabella's husband. That's right, and I'm telling you, there's been some kind of mix-up. Henry here works as custodial staff. He quit being a doctor years ago. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Dr. Walsh's expression shifted from confusion to something sharper. Mr. Sterling, Dr. Douglas has been on staff emeritus status since 2021. He maintains his medical license and serves on several hospital boards. The foundation he established in his wife's memory has donated over $8 million to cancer research. Other diners weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. The entire restaurant had become an audience to our family drama. Jonathan was shaking his head frantically. That's impossible. He rides the bus. He lives in a studio apartment. He mops floors for minimum wage. Which is his choice, Dr. Walsh said firmly. And frankly, none of your business. Arabella was staring at me with wide eyes. Dad, is this true? Before I could answer, Jonathan erupted. This is insane! He shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You people are all playing some kind of joke, some elaborate prank. His voice carried across the entire restaurant now. Every conversation had stopped. Servers stood frozen with plates in their hands. Henry Douglas is a failure, Jonathan shouted. He's a broken-down janitor who abandoned his career because he couldn't handle grief like a real man. A collective gasp rippled through the dining room. He's a burden, Jonathan continued, his face red with rage and embarrassment. A pathetic old man clinging to his dead wife's memory. He belongs in a nursing home, not at this table. The silence that followed was deafening. Arabella had gone completely pale. Jonathan, stop, please. No, I won't stop. We've been tiptoeing around this family embarrassment for 3 years. Your father is mentally ill, Arabella. He's unstable. He's completely lost his mind. Catherine Brooks stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. Don't you tell me what to do. Jonathan whirled on her. This is between my family and your confused staff who apparently think this janitor is someone important. Doctor. Walsh was watching the scene with the cold professional assessment of someone who dealt with unhinged people before. Mr. Sterling, she said quietly, you're making a fool of yourself. I'm making a fool of myself? Jonathan laughed, but it sounded more like a bark. I'm not the one pretending a janitor is some kind of millionaire philanthropist. He pointed at me with shaking finger. Look at him. Look at his clothes, his shoes. Does this look like someone who has $8 million? The young chef who'd thanked me earlier had moved closer. Other staff members were gathering at the edges of the scene. You want to know the truth? Jonathan's voice reached new heights. Henry Douglas is a dead weight, a burden. His own daughter is ashamed to be seen with him. Arabella flinched like she'd been slapped. He's holding everyone back. His wife died 3 years ago, and he's been wallowing in self-pity ever since. Aurora would be disgusted by what he's become. The mention of Aurora's name in such a vicious context made something cold settle in my chest. Jonathan wasn't finished. He talks to her picture like she's still alive. He can't hold down a real job. He lives like a homeless person by choice. And now you people are enabling his delusions. The restaurant had gone so quiet I could hear the kitchen exhaust fan humming. He doesn't deserve respect.
Jonathan's final words came out as a roar. He deserves exactly what he's gotten. Nothing. He stood there breathing hard, his expensive suit disheveled, his hair mussed from running his hands through it. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then Catherine Brooks spoke, her voice carrying clearly across the dining room. "Sir, you're talking about our owner." The words hit Jonathan like a physical blow. "What did you say?" Catherine's professional composure never wavered. "Dr. Douglas owns the Gardens restaurant. He has for 3 years.
This building, the land, everything." Jonathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "That's impossible." "I can show you the incorporation papers if you'd like," Catherine said calmly. "The Gardens, LLC, sole proprietor, Dr. Henry Douglas." Arabella had gone completely still. Her hands lay flat on the table, trembling slightly. "Dad?" she whispered. Dr. Walsh was reaching into her purse. "Henry, those foundation documents I mentioned? I have them right here if you'd like to review them." She pulled out a leather portfolio and set it on the table in front of me. Jonathan stared at the portfolio like it might explode. "This isn't real," he said, but his voice had lost all its earlier conviction. "This can't be real." I looked up at him calmly. "Would you like to see what real looks like, Jonathan?" Dr. Walsh opened the portfolio with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd presented dozens of board proposals. "The Aurora Douglas Cancer Research Foundation Quarterly Report," she announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Current assets, $8.2 million. She laid the first document on the table. Official letterhead, hospital seal, my name in bold letters as chief benefactor. Jonathan was staring at the papers like they were written in hieroglyphics. Foundation established March 15, 2021, Dr. Walsh continued. Initial endowment, $4.7 million from Dr. Douglas's personal assets and Aurora Douglas's life insurance settlement. Arabella reached for the document with shaking hands. Dad, this has your signature. It does. But how? Dr. Walsh flipped to the next page. Current initiatives include the Aurora Douglas Pediatric Oncology Wing, the Douglas Family Medical Scholarship Program, and the Emergency Medicine Training Center. The young chef stepped closer. The scholarship program has helped 43 students so far, he said quietly. I was number 37. Other staff members began moving toward our table. Not aggressively, but with the kind of respect reserved for people who've changed your life. A server I hadn't met approached cautiously. Dr. Douglas, I'm Maria Santos. Your foundation paid for my daughter's cancer treatment last year. She's in remission now. Her words carried across the silent restaurant. A woman at table 12 wiped tears from her eyes. Jonathan was hyperventilating. This is impossible. You drive a beat-up Honda. You live in a studio apartment. Catherine Brooks cleared her throat. Dr. Douglas chose to maintain modest living arrangements. His financial decisions are his own business. Dr. Walsh laid out another document. Recent foundation activities include a $340,000 donation to the Children's Cancer Ward, funding for new MRI equipment, and research grants for 5 universities. $340,000, Arabella repeated numbly. That's just last month, Dr. Walsh added. The foundation typically disperses between 2 and 3 million annually. A man in a suit approached from the bar area. Distinguished, maybe 60, with the bearing of someone used to authority. Dr. Douglas? I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Judge William Crawford from the county courthouse. I wanted to thank you personally for the legal aid clinic funding. He extended his hand formally. The Douglas Justice Initiative has helped over 200 families navigate medical bankruptcy proceedings. You've literally saved lives. Jonathan was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had gone white. Legal aid clinic? Arabella whispered. Judge Crawford nodded. Your father established it 2 years ago. Provides free legal assistance for families facing financial hardship due to medical expenses. My court sees the results every week. More people were approaching now. A couple from across the room, an elderly woman with a hospital volunteer badge, a young man in scrubs who'd been dining alone. Dr. Douglas? The woman with the volunteer badge spoke up. I'm Helen Martinez from the hospital auxiliary. The volunteers wanted me to give you this. She handed me a small wrapped package. It's a photo album, pictures from all the families you've helped. We thought you should see the faces. The dining room had transformed into something like a receiving line. People who'd recognized me, staff members who worked for me, patients and families whose lives had been touched by Aurora's foundation. Catherine Brooks gestured to the walls around us. Dr. Douglas, should I show them the memorial wall? She led us to the far side of the dining room, where a discreet alcove displayed photographs and plaques. At the center hung a large portrait of Aurora in her nurse's uniform, surrounded by smaller photos of cancer patients, scholarship recipients, and foundation beneficiaries. The Aurora Douglas Memorial Garden, Catherine explained. Dr. Douglas commissioned it when he purchased the restaurant. Every white rose represents a life touched by the foundation. Arabella was crying openly now, but these weren't tears of shame anymore. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Before I could answer, another voice cut through the crowd. Because your father has always been the most humble man I've ever known. Everyone turned. Dr. Walsh was holding her phone, which was displaying what looked like a news article. Forbes magazine, December 2023, she read aloud. The hidden philanthropists, quiet heroes changing healthcare. Dr. Henry Douglas, featured as one of America's most impactful medical donors. She showed the phone screen to nearby diners. After losing his wife to pancreatic cancer, retired surgeon Henry Douglas has channeled his grief into the largest private cancer research initiative in the state. His foundation has funded breakthrough treatments that have saved an estimated 1,200 lives. The number hit the room like a thunderclap. 1,200 lives. Jonathan had sunk back into his chair, his face gray. 1,200. Dr. Walsh wasn't finished. The article goes on. Douglas's unusual approach to philanthropy, working anonymously while maintaining a modest lifestyle, reflects his belief that true service requires sacrifice, not recognition. Catherine Brooks stepped forward again. Dr. Douglas purchased the garden specifically because this is where he proposed to Aurora. He wanted to preserve the space where their love story began. She gestured around the restaurant. Every detail is designed to honor her memory. The menu includes her favorite dishes. The garden patio features flowers from their wedding. Table 7, where you're sitting, is permanently reserved for the Douglas family. Arabella was staring at the table number placard, reserved for the Douglas family memorial table. Memorial table? She whispered. Dr. Douglas dines here every month on the anniversary of Aurora's death, Catherine explained gently. He comes alone, orders her favorite meal, and sits where he can see her roses through the window. The weight of 3 years of misunderstanding crashed over Arabella like a wave. Dad, we thought you'd given up. I didn't give up, sweetheart. I found a different way to fight. Jonathan was shaking his head frantically. This doesn't make sense. If you have millions of dollars, why are you working as a janitor? Dr. Walsh answered for me. Because Dr. Douglas believes in leading by example. He won't ask others to serve if he's not willing to serve himself. She turned to face the room. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at a man who could live in luxury, but chooses to mop floors because he believes every job has dignity. Who could buy a mansion but lives modestly because he'd rather fund cancer research. Who could retire comfortably but works nights because staying connected to medicine keeps him connected to his purpose. The restaurant erupted in spontaneous applause. Jonathan sat frozen as the sound washed over him. Every person in the room was standing, clapping, looking at the man he'd just called a pathetic failure with unmistakable respect and admiration. Dr. Walsh placed one final document on the table. The Foundation's 5-year plan calls for expanding operations to 3 additional states. Projected impact, 5,000 families served, 10,000 lives saved. She looked directly at Jonathan. All funded by a man you just called a burden. The applause died slowly, leaving Jonathan alone in his humiliation. Catherine Brooks addressed the room formally. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Henry Douglas, founder of the Aurora Douglas Cancer Research Foundation, owner of the Gardens restaurant, and the man responsible for saving more lives after retirement than most doctors save in their entire careers. Part 8. Payoff Action. Henry's response. 808 words. The applause faded, leaving the restaurant in expectant silence. Every eye in the place was fixed on our table, waiting to see how I would handle Jonathan's public humiliation. I stood slowly, my worn work boots quiet against the hardwood floor. Thank you all, I said, addressing the room. But this isn't about me. I gestured to Aurora's portrait on the memorial wall.
Everything I've done for the past 3 years has been about honoring my wife's memory. Aurora spent her career caring for others. The Foundation just continues her work.
I turned to face Jonathan, who was still seated, his face pale with shock. Jonathan, you asked me earlier how it feels to be a loser. My voice carried clearly across the silent dining room. Let me tell you what losing actually means. Losing means watching the woman you love fight cancer for 18 months and knowing all your medical training can't save her. Losing means holding her hand while she takes her last breath and realizing you'll never hear her laugh again. Jonathan's eyes were fixed on the table. But what you don't understand, what you've never understood, is that losing someone doesn't make you a failure. It makes you responsible for carrying their love forward. I pulled out my wallet and removed the photo of Aurora I carried everywhere. Hospital Employee Picnic, 2019. She was laughing at something one of the nurses had said, her face bright with joy. You said Aurora would be disgusted by what I've become. You're wrong. I held up the photo so the room could see. Aurora would be proud that I found a way to turn grief into purpose. She'd be proud that her death has meaning, that it saved other families from going through what we did. Arabella was crying quietly, her hand pressed to her mouth. You called me pathetic for talking to her picture, but those conversations remind me who I'm working for. They keep me focused on what matters. I turned to Arabella. Sweetheart, I'm sorry you've been ashamed of me. I understand why my choices seemed like giving up, but I wasn't giving up. I was starting over. Dr. Walsh stepped forward. The Foundation has funded research that's led to 3 breakthrough treatments. The early detection protocols we've sponsored have improved survival rates by 40%. She addressed Jonathan directly. The man you mocked tonight has revolutionized cancer care in this region. His failure has saved more lives than most people will ever touch. I sat back down, keeping my voice calm and measured. Jonathan, you're going to be a father soon. That's a beautiful thing. But if you want to be part of our family, if you want our grandchild to know their grandfather, you need to understand something. The restaurant was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. This isn't about money. It never was. It's about what kind of man you choose to be when life breaks your heart. I gestured around the room. Everyone here understands that wealth isn't what you accumulate. It's what you give away. Success isn't about status. It's about service. Jonathan finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You made assumptions based on what you could see instead of trying to understand what you couldn't. Catherine Brooks approached with a leather-bound book. Dr. Douglas, this is our guest registry. Would you like to see how many people have left messages thanking you? She opened to a random page. Comments covered every inch. Thank you for saving my daughter. The scholarship changed my life. Your foundation gave us hope when we had none. Hundreds of pages, Catherine said softly. 3 years of gratitude. I looked at Jonathan one more time. You wanted to know what kind of influence I'd be around your children. Now you know. I'm the kind of grandfather who believes in turning pain into purpose, who thinks serving others is more important than serving yourself. Arabella reached across the table and took my hand. Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. You don't need to apologize, sweetheart. Grief is complicated. It doesn't always look the way people expect. Dr. Walsh closed her portfolio. Henry, the board needs your signature on the pediatric wing funding by Monday. $5 million approved for construction. She said it matter-of-factly, but the number hit Jonathan like a physical blow. $5 million? He stammered. The new wing will treat 500 children annually, Dr. Walsh explained, all funded by the foundation your father-in-law built from his grief. I stood again, this time to address my son-in-law directly. Jonathan, you have a choice to make. You can continue seeing me as an embarrassment, or you can try to understand what Aurora and I built together. What we're still building. I pulled on my old work jacket, the one with Metropolitan Hospital embroidered on the sleeve. Either way, I'll be at the hospital tomorrow night, mopping floors and remembering why every job has dignity, because that's what real men do when life knocks them down. They find a way to serve. The silence that followed my words was broken by the sound of chairs scraping against the floor. The couple at table 12 was standing, applauding again. Then the elderly woman with the volunteer badge joined them. Within seconds, the entire restaurant was on its feet, but I wasn't watching the crowd. I was watching Jonathan. He sat frozen in his chair, staring at the foundation documents scattered across our table. The numbers must have been sinking in. $8.2 million. $5 million for the pediatric wing. $340,000 donated last month alone. His phone buzzed. Then again, and again. "Jonathan," Arabella said quietly. "Your phone." He picked it up with shaking hands. His face went even paler as he scrolled through the notifications. "What is it?" Arabella asked. "Someone recorded?" He cleared his throat. "Someone recorded my outburst. It's already on social media." Dr. Walsh pulled out her own phone. "Let me see." Within seconds, she'd found the video. A clear recording of Jonathan calling me a pathetic failure and a burden, demanding to know how it feels to be a loser. The timestamp showed it had been posted 12 minutes ago. 43,000 views already, Dr. Walsh reported grimly, and climbing fast. Jonathan's law firm partnership was built on reputation management. Corporate clients didn't hire lawyers who created public relations disasters. "The comments aren't favorable," Dr. Walsh continued, scrolling through responses. "Imagine humiliating a philanthropist who saved thousands of lives. This lawyer just destroyed a cancer research hero. Who attacks a grieving widower in public?" Jonathan's breathing was becoming shallow and rapid. "I need to call the firm. I need to explain." But his phone was buzzing with incoming calls now. His senior partner's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Arabella said firmly. "Mr. Carmichael?" Jonathan's voice cracked as he answered. "Yes, sir. I've seen the video. No, sir. I can explain." The conversation was brief and one-sided. Even from across the table, I could hear the angry voice on the other end. "Yes, sir. I understand. Monday morning. Yes, sir." Jonathan hung up and stared at his phone like it had bitten him. "Emergency partners meeting Monday morning," he whispered. "Mr. Carmichael said the video is a catastrophic embarrassment to the firm's reputation." Meanwhile, people were still approaching our table. A young doctor in scrubs had arrived from the hospital. "Dr. Douglas, I'm Sarah Chen from Pediatric Oncology. I wanted to thank you for the new equipment funding. We just saved a 6-year-old girl last week using the MRI machine your foundation provided." Her words carried across the dining room, where several people were still recording with their phones. "The foundation's impact on childhood cancer treatment has been revolutionary," Dr. Chen continued. "You've given hope to families who had none." I noticed Jonathan flinch at each new revelation about the foundation's work. Catherine Brooks appeared at my elbow. "Dr. Douglas, the local news station called. They want to do a feature story about the foundation. Apparently the video has reached the health reporter." "That won't be necessary," I said. "Actually," Dr. Walsh interjected, "it might be exactly what we need. The foundation could use the publicity for our next fundraising campaign." More phones were buzzing around the restaurant. The video was spreading faster than any of us had anticipated. Arabella's own phone started ringing. She looked at the caller ID and frowned. "It's my department head at the hospital," she answered nervously. "Dr. Peterson?" "Yes, I've seen the video. Yes, that's my father and my husband." Another brief conversation, but this one ended differently. "Dr. Peterson wants to meet with Dad tomorrow," Arabella announced, "about expanding the foundation's partnership with the pediatric department." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Jonathan's attempt to humiliate me publicly was creating new opportunities for the foundation's work. A man in a business suit approached from the bar. "Dr. Douglas? I'm Tom Bradley from Channel 7 News. I know you don't typically seek publicity, but this story could inspire other philanthropists. Would you consider an interview?" Before I could answer, my own phone rang. The caller ID showed Judge Crawford, who'd spoken to me earlier. "Henry? I just saw the video online. The legal community is rallying support for the foundation. We want to expand the justice initiative statewide." By the time I hung up, there were 6 more missed calls from hospital administrators, foundation board members, and community leaders. The consequences of Jonathan's public attack were rippling outward, but not in the way he'd intended. "The video has over 200,000 views now," someone called out from across the restaurant. Jonathan buried his face in his hands. "This is a disaster." Arabella reached across the table and touched his arm. "Jonathan, you did this to yourself." Her voice was calm but firm. "Dad spent 3 years building something beautiful from his grief, and you tried to destroy it out of spite." She stood up slowly.
I'm going home with my father tonight. You can stay at your parents' house until you figure out how to apologize properly." And with that, she picked up her purse and waited for me to lead the way out. As we walked to the parking lot, Arabella slipped her arm through mine. "Dad, I owe you such an enormous apology." "No, sweetheart, you don't." "Yes, I do. I let shame cloud my judgment. I let Jonathan's ambition poison my respect for you." We reached my old Honda Civic, the same car Jonathan had mocked earlier, now sitting under the streetlight like a testament to my choices. "I kept this car because it runs perfectly," I said, patting the faded hood. "Aurora and I bought it together in 1997.
43,000 miles when we drove it off the lot." Arabella smiled through her tears. "She loved this car." "She did. Said it represented our values. Practical, reliable, honest." I opened the passenger door for her. "The foundation could buy me any car I wanted, but this one carries our memories." As we drove through the quiet streets toward her apartment, Arabella was quiet for several minutes. "Are you really going to work at the hospital tomorrow night?" "I am." "Why? With everything you've built, why do you still mop floors?" I considered the question as we stopped at a red light. "Because the night shift janitor position was open when I needed it most. Because honest work keeps me grounded. Because Aurora always said that how you treat the janitor says everything about who you really are." Arabella nodded, slowly. She was right. The hospital offered me consulting positions, administrative roles, ways to earn my old salary while doing foundation work. But that felt like trying to buy my way out of grief. Instead, you chose to serve. I chose to remember who Aurora fell in love with. A man who believed medicine was about service, not status. We pulled into her apartment complex parking lot. "Dad, what happens now? With Jonathan, I mean." "That's between you and him, sweetheart. But your baby deserves to grow up understanding that real strength comes from helping others, not from putting them down." Arabella unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out immediately. "Will you tell me about the foundation? About Mom's favorite patients? About why you chose pediatric oncology?" "I'd love to." She hugged me tightly before getting out of the car. "Dad, I'm proud to be your daughter. And I'm proud that my baby will have you as a grandfather." Driving home alone, I thought about Aurora's favorite saying, "Love multiplies when you give it away." Tonight, 3 years after losing her, I finally felt like she was right.
What would you do if your own family underestimated your true worth? Let me know in the comments below.